it's Romanosky and Aidan Goss shooting from Calgary, Canada, and the Lugnuts facility. And what we have behind us here is a 1953 Sunbeam Alpine Mark I. We'll do our usual comprehensive video. We'll talk a little bit about Sunbeam and a little bit about the Sunbeam Alpine. We'll go into, we'll do an exterior walk around. We'll go through the interior. We'll put the vehicle on the hoist and have a look underneath it. And then we'll do a cold start video and a drive. But by the end of it, I think you'll have a pretty comprehensive view on this car. You know, we do these videos not for likes and subscribes or clickbait or whatever. We do them to impart the greatest amount of confidence from somebody who might be buying the car online, and if that's the case, probably buying it sight unseen and sending a bunch of money to somebody they don't know for a car they haven't seen, possibly in a different country or even continent, okay? So we will try to go through every square inch of this car to the best of our ability and let any prospective purchaser know exactly what they're buying. So first, let's go into the history that I know of. As I understand it, this car came from Florida. It went to like a British car guy in Victoria, British Columbia. And that is where we had a local car restorer who found it in Victoria and then did a ground up restoration on it. He is now, I think, 92 and moved into some assisted living arrangement. And the car was then sold to his financial guy. His guy looked after his investments, and he wound up taking the car, driving it for a few years, I believe, and had his fun with it, and now it's listed for sale. So I don't have much of the history before it was in Canada, and that would be around 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And before that, it was a Florida car. So that's about all I know on it. We do have a restoration binder showing the work on it. I mean, it's obvious to look at the car that it has been a ground up restoration. That's fairly obvious just from looking underneath the car. But we'll have the documentation of that as well. If I can only find the B for bonnet. That is what I suppose opens the bonnet. All right. So we'll have a quick look around here. Okay, so about the Sunbeam Alpine. I mean, there's better sources of information on Sunbeam than me, but just from memory, Sunbeam, it's a very old company. You know, they would have made cars. You know, I think you know, from like 1905. I know they were a very famous bicycle company, and they made, oh, I don't know, the Sunbeam, oh, can't remember what it was, Golden Ray or something like that. But they made kind of the nicest bicycles or some of the nicest bicycles in England in the late 19th century and early 20th century. Then they got into cars, and they've always been like a mid-market car, like you know, not you know, a little bit fancier than the Austins and so forth, but not as fancy as the Bentley and Rolls-Royce. So they were quality cars at a good price. I think that's what Sunbeam mostly was. They did some racing. They had a really enthusiastic designer who I think nearly bankrupted the company in you know, in motorsport, building you know, some really wonderful racing cars, F1 cars, Grand Prix cars in the not F1, a Grand Prix in the 20s. And then I think they cooled it on the Grand Prix racing because it was too expensive, and started doing some land speed record cars. So there are, there's some great Sunbeams in the, Bewley Motor Collection and different museums in the UK. And these would have been like Aero engine, 27 liter. I think they even did a dual engine land speed record car, 300 miles an hour or something like that in the 1930s. So then Sunbeam, what happened to them? They were then, as all these companies did, they didn't do too well in the Depression, and then there was a big consolidation of companies, and they wound up with Talbot and Dirac forming a company called the STD Motor Company, a name which really never took off. So the S and the S was the Sunbeam, and the T Talbot, and the D was Dirac. And so that, I think, lasted until through the 1930s anyway, until the war. Then that company, like all the British companies, would have been involved in war munitions, and I think they made ambulances and buses and so forth. It got reorganized. I'm sure I don't have this 100% right, but they would have got reorganized into the, they would have got bought out by the Roots brothers after the war. The Roots brothers were distributors of dealerships and service facilities. They were very successful, and they had multiple franchises. And they were looking to get into building cars. So the Roots brothers would have bought Sunbeam, Talbot, Dirac, Hillman, Humber, a whole bunch of cars that none of which I think exist anymore. But anyway, they bought those, and then this company, then they branded, they basically badge engineering. They tried to be like a British GM, and so they had this company which was Sunbeam Talbot. And I think up until 1953, and then it just became Sunbeam. But the Sunbeam Talbot, would have been a company organized by the Roots brothers, and the history of which would have been in the Sunbeam Talbot Dirac STD company, that then changed to Sunbeam Talbot, and then just Sunbeam. And it's a bit confusing because Dirac and Talbot were French, and there were also English versions of them, etc. So it's all pretty confusing. But that's where the Sunbeam name comes from. And then they, did mostly sedans, as did everybody else. But then they came out with their sporting car, which was the Sunbeam Alpine. So in the 50s, most manufacturers wanted to compete in motorsport for the publicity benefits. The Grand Prix racing and rallies and so forth were well publicized, and if your car did well in those, you would race on Sunday and sell on Monday. It also took part in international rallying in the 1950s. And again, had a fairly distinguished competition career, driven by first-rate drivers. I think even Sterling Moss drove an Alpine in one of the races. As well, it actually had a pretty good film career, most notably in the 1953 picture To Catch a Thief with Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. So we've got a fairly well-known car, at least in the 1950s. I think they made less than 1,000 of them. I want to say like 800 and change. I'll print that in the video below. So it's a pretty rare car. It was in the early 50s. Britain was looking for foreign currency, and the manufacturers were, rationed steel and so forth based on how much they were exported. So that explains the left-hand drive. I think most of the Sunbeam Alpines were in fact exported, although they didn't make many of them, so not in large numbers. And very few survive today. I don't think I've ever seen another Sunbeam Alpine, even in all the British shows I've been going for the last 25 years. It is a really rare car. I don't know how many exist in North America right now, but you know, if I were guessing, I'd say there's probably no more than a couple hundred of these left. So you know, it's an interesting car. It's a coach-built car, and the body is built by Thrupp and Maybury, and you can tell, like, at the bottom of these, you know, the bottom of these panels are rolled, and you can see that in the rear here, where you get all these sort of old school coach building, all these coach building techniques. And this was an era when, in the 50s, you know, the Bentleys and so forth were not produced coach built anymore. I mean, some were, but for their standard models, you know, they went to they farmed out the body. So they, in other words, it was too expensive to make coach built bodies, and so they farmed out the body manufacturer to suppliers, and the quality wasn't as good as it was pre-war. So this is actually a coach built car, which I think makes it, you know, quite special. None of the other period cars, you know, like the you know, the Jaguar, the MG, the Austin Healey, none of those were coach built. So this is like Thrupp and Maybury. They would do Rolls Royces and Bentleys and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so it's a coach built car, and we can see that in the interior, you know, it's done, you know, to a pretty high standard, right? And there's a lot of, we've got the banjo steering wheel, kind of an interesting place for the tachometer. We've got, you know, quite a luxurious, you know, seats and door cards and so on. You know, very close to what you get with an Aston. Well, yeah, close to what you get with an Aston or a Bentley. No roll-up windows. So there's still side screens, but I haven't seen door cards that elaborate and well done with side screens before. So I think that's kind of unusual. And so we get quite a luxurious interior. And then for an engine, we have a 2.25 liter, 2.25 liter inline four. And if we look closely at it, we can really see, you know, beautiful details, you know, the alloy head and so on, and intake manifold. And there's a lot of really great details in the 1950s. You know, as you get into the 60s and 70s in England, you know, you see they're taking money out of it. But the 50s British cars were made really nicely. Okay, so. Okay, well, let's start out with the paint on this Sunbeam Alpine. Now, the first thing you would notice is that there are a couple of different shades of red if you look at it in the right light. And with these fluorescent lights, they do pick it up. In different light, it is less noticeable. But we do have a lighter shade on some panels and a darker shade on others. So just exploring this for a minute, this happens when parts of the car are painted at different times, and maybe the paint is mixed at different times. And then when the car is all put together, you notice that for one environmental reason or another, or paint mixing reason, or who knows what, paint can be very fussy. You've got a subtle difference in shade, but now you've painted all the panels and you just put the car together anyway. So that happens, and it can happen with metallic paint if it's laid down differently from one panel to the other, and it can happen with non-metallic as well. So it looks like, to me, what's happened with this car is that the front of the car, the bonnet, the fenders, and the doors were painted in one time, and the rear fenders and this rear cowl behind the seats was painted at another time. The trunk lid is a darker shade. The spare tire lid, where the license plate is a darker shade. The doors and the front fenders can't really tell in this light, but the doors and the fenders are the darker shade. So I mean, you don't need to correct anything. The car looks great and presents well. But if you were fussy or down the road you wanted to correct that, what you would do is, it looks like the cowl was painted in the lighter shade as well. So what you would do is you would take the windscreen off, you would mask the front of the cowl, the rear cowl, and the rear fenders, and spray them in the darker shade. And then I think and then those lighter pieces would then match the darker pieces. But you don't have to do that. And like I said, it's only in certain light that you actually notice it anyway. So going further with the paint, I don't see, it's not a concours paint job. You can notice the odd little sort of nit in it, but it's pretty good. The car's it's been probably 5 or more years since it's been painted. It probably could use a polish, but I don't see any I don't see any sanding marks. I don't see any waviness. I don't see any evidence of the paint cracking. There's one chip in it down there at the bottom of the door, and we can see that paint there is lifting, and we can see some of the filler underneath that. Okay, so that is one part of the car that that has a chip in it, but otherwise the paint all looks pretty good. Okay, so it's not a concours restoration. It's a competent hobbyist restoration. It's very difficult to get really high quality paintwork done locally. So this is probably just the best the guy could do. And we see some little marks in the paint, a few, minor prep marks, I suppose. But overall, it's pretty good. It's maybe a little bit dry over here. So, the paint might be a 7 out of 10 or so. Okay, so that's the paint. And like I said, the vehicle is presentable. I don't think you need to do anything with it. It's attractive. And the paint is uniform and of decent quality. As long as you're not expecting a concours paint job, there is the color mismatch that could be corrected, just by repainting basically the rear fenders and the front and rear cowls, and that would give you even paint throughout. So if you want to do that, you could put it on your to-do list. Otherwise, the car, looks great. The paint looks great. Let's go to a more important issue with car restoration than the paint, I think, when we're talking about bodywork, is the gaps, because those aren't easily fixed. And oftentimes when a vehicle gets rust repair and you start getting into the inner and outer sills and rebuilding those portions, or putting replacement panels on the car, especially on a 50s car where they were sort of hand fit, on the assembly line, it's very hard to get the door gaps right. So with this one, the door gaps are excellent, I would say. And we see the leading and the bottom edge of the door, does not stick out proud from the bodywork. So that's something I look for. And the evenness of the gaps, and basically just how well the door fits in the aperture. So those door gaps are excellent. And with the hood as well, we also see good gaps. I guess there is a little bit tight there, and you can see the paint scraping off, but it looks pretty good to me, and this is a big bonnet, okay? So sometimes the cars, if they've had, front end damage or whatever, the gap between the bonnet and the fenders is going to be different from side to side, and this one is pretty good. We'll have a look at the other door, and it is excellent as well, and it sits flush and maybe just a tiny bit proud at the rear here. And of course we do have that area where it looks like it contacted the bottom of the door and chipped the paint right there. So we do have that problem. But overall, the gaps are pretty good. And the trunk as well, the gaps on that are excellent, I would say, okay? And there is the spare tire cover, which we can also see. Okay, so that's the paint and the gaps in the body panel. There's a lot of chrome on this car, and it would be very hard to find and very expensive to restore. So we can have a look at that. We can start with the bumper. And when we look at chrome, we're looking for pitting, for oxidation, and for flaking. Okay, and if we look at the bumper, it looks in excellent shape. And the headlamp bezels as well. Those are the Lucas 488 lights. You can just buy those. Those aren't a big deal, but it looks like that's what they've done here. And we can see some light pitting on the metal air vents here. And with the Sunbeam grill, it looks in excellent shape, and I don't see a lot of pitting or oxidation from the grill. So all that, the badge looks good, and all these pieces look good. Okay, so chrome on this car is in excellent shape. We can look at some of the other pieces. Mirrors, some light pitting on the windscreen surround. They're the correct type wipers. It's the hood, dash vents. And this rail for the top of the windscreen also looks good. These moldings line up nicely. Bonnet latches, again, maybe a little bit of light pitting. They look like they're original pieces, which is nice, not reproductions. I don't think you probably couldn't buy reproductions for this car because it's coach built and the numbers were so small. Looking at the fuel cap, the tail light surrounds, the rear bumper, and again, very light scratching, very light oxidation, and what appear to be all original pieces, okay? So it looks like this car, yeah, and that's good, because you'll never probably have a really difficult time finding replacement chrome and trim on a Series 1 Sunbeam Alpine, okay? So that's all the chrome pieces. Little fasteners for the hood are all in place, and all the chrome looks pretty good. For rubber, there's not too much rubber. These wiper blades are still reasonably supple. We have some, let's look at the rubber sill plates still look good. Those were new pieces. And in the sills, all that looks good. Weather stripping. So those are all new pieces that are still in good shape. And there's weather stripping on the edge. So that's all supple, new rubber. Let's see what we have on the other door. Okay, and of course the same thing on the other side, okay, with the new rubber door seals and at the front as well. So those are actually pretty tricky to put on properly, and they can get dislodged fairly easily. So on the exterior, we don't have a lot of glass, but the windscreen doesn't have any chips in it. And there's side curtains. There's no glass side windows, so we don't have to worry about that. And there's no cracks in the headlamp bezels. Okay, so we've gone through the paint, we've gone through the door fit, we've gone through the glass, rubber, and chrome. We'll take a look at the tires. And the hubcaps look like they're in nice shape. These are older tires. They are, we'll go to the other side of the car where we can see them. 185 16s on 16-inch wheels. And there's lots of tread. This car wouldn't have had much mileage on it. And I'll try to get a DOT stamp on those tires, see how old they are. There's the other one. So, you know, restored hubcaps, of course, white wall tires. Chrome is in good shape on all the hubcaps. These are a Coker Classic tire. And sometimes the Classics don't have date codes on them. Don't see a date code on the tires. But they're at least 5 years old. But again, the car has been stored inside, so you know, there's no dry cracking or deterioration from the tires. We can go to the interior, and it presents very nicely. I think it's probably impossible to reasonably fault. All of the upholstery looks well fitted. The seats look like they have the right amount of padding. They look correct for the vehicle with the correct stitching. There's quite a bit of chrome plated trim on the interior, and it all looks in nice shape. The instruments are very cool, and they all look in nice shape as well. The Bakelite buttons, the painted glove box, and the tachometer, which is sort of curiously placed. And you can tell this is a high quality interior. It does remind me of the other 50s coach built cars that were always quite expensive. We had a beautiful banjo type Bakelite steering wheel. I guess you've got a couple cracks starting, but overall it's in excellent condition. And the boss stays in place and the wheel just turns. Those are your signal lights there. Might as well read off the mileage of 51,237 miles. And we've got the gauges there for fuel and water temperature, amps, and oil. So we've got the signal lights there, the hazard light. We have the Bakelite buttons. I'm not sure what they all do. I think that's starting the car. And the rest must be lights, I suppose. We've got the bonnet to open the bonnet. We've got the knob for that. And then we've got ventilation knobs on either side, letting air into the footwells. And then we can see a big crackle finished heater box under the dash. And we have the gear selector with a push button lockout for reverse and the emergency brake. So it's quite a high quality interior, and it looks similar to what you might find in a period Mercedes or Lancia or something like that. So quite a bit, like kind of one notch above what you'd find in Austin Healey or MG or one of the other British cars. A little bit more upmarket, particularly with the body construction that I understand is, I think it's done by Thrupp and Mayberry, if I'm not mistaken, who did all kinds of luxury cars like Daimlers and Rolls Royces and so on. Okay, so that is the interior. Is set off nicely with a tan, with the body colored instrument and some great kind of Art Deco, styled interior switchgear and steering wheel and so on. And the seats are also very comfortable as well. So this is quite a comfortable sport touring machine. And they've done a really nice job with the interior, and it's really hard to fault. Carpets are nice, etc. Now the soft top, I've never really seen it quite done like this before. It's quite an elaborate affair with like a high quality canvas top, and it looks like we fold the seats out and then slide the frame rails forward, and then they slide up on this vertical track, and then we put the soft top up. So give me a second to put this camera down, and I'll see if I can figure out how to do this. Now the hood, I don't think it's ever been up. I think I'm the first person to, this is the first time I've tried to erect the canvas top. It's beautiful quality, but you can tell that it is tight, and it probably needs to be soaked a little bit and gently stretched in the sun, because I'm having some trouble fastening it all here, and I don't want to pull too hard without it being sort of moist and having some stretch in it. And I think somebody's probably tried that before and then broke these off, the fasteners off. So the soft top's going to require a little bit of work to fit properly, and but it should be possible to do that. You just need to soak it and sort of put it in the sun and gently stretch it into place and replace these two grommets. But obviously it's a brand new top. So that is the interior. It looks pretty cute. I wouldn't get caught in a rainstorm. It's one person can do it, but it's probably easier with a two-person job to put the top on it. But it is canvas and is with a zip-out rear window, and so it's a high-quality item for sure. An expensive item. Okay, so that's the soft top. So in the rear of the car, we can see a nice picnic basket, the number 53, which is I think the number for Herbie in the Herbie movies. We've got a jack that is wrapped up in the cloth cover. We have a bonnet strap, a little bit of oil staining on that, and that attaches on those and then goes across the bonnet. You can get, if you wanted to redo that, you can get a tack shop, a horse shop, to be able to get you new leather for that. So we've got the tire irons there as well, and a period 53 Alberta license plate, and a nice Sunbeam Alpine postcard, 1953 Sunbeam Talbot 90. The spare tire, interestingly, is in a separate compartment, and that's a nice coach-built touch. I've only ever seen that on Rolls Royces and Bentleys, not on a sports car, but you can see that has its own compartment, and that's great for keeping the dirt of the tire away from your picnic. And then this closes here like so, and then you've got this tool here which then locks it, and that goes in the trunk. Okay, under the bonnet, it all looks very nice. All looks completely restored with lots of nice touches. We can see beautiful these alloy castings for the valve cover and oil filler cap and so on. So it's all nicely done. We've got the blower motor there, voltage regulator. We've got a battery cutoff. We have we've got an electric fuel pump which has been let in just to give some more fuel pressure, and that's what that device is. We have a combination of some NOS parts for hoses, and well, I guess some just more modern pieces like that, which is, I'm not sure what that's from, but it's not from the 53, but anyway, it works. Original distributor, wiper motor down there, reservoir for the brake fluid there, fuel filler cap. We can see the original Coventry radiator, nice Sunbeam grill, and data plates, body numbers are all on there. not sure what all those numbers reference. BISP. So I think the body was Thrupp and Maybury, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll get a closer look at some of these gauges, or some of these data plates. And what is that? STA 1020, it looks like. Okay, so it all looks very presentable. And again, you know, I like the use of the original fasteners. And what else can we see or notice? We have the brass nuts for the exhaust manifold. We've got an alloy intake manifold. The carburetor is, what is that? Stromberg carburetor. There's the number on that. Close look at the blower motor. Close look at the voltage regulator. Close look at the distributor. I don't know if that has a number on it that I can read. Okay, there's the numbers off the distributor. Oil filter down there. Coil. Wiper motor. Starter solenoid. And that's the fan on the back of the radiator. Okay, so all looks nice down there. Neat hinges, huh? For the doors, like kind of overbuilt. So this is, the body of this car is a quality construction. It's a coach-built car. It is, you know, even nicer than I think the period, because I had a 1953 Rolls Royce, or a Bentley R-Type sedan. And, you know, in many respects, this appears to be a higher quality body than that period Bentley of the same year. So I'm impressed by that, as well as the interior and the fittament. So it's definitely you know, a luxury sport touring car for the day. Okay, we've got this 1953 Sunbeam Alpine up on the lift, and so let's go take a close look underneath. And we'll go through it. Okay, this is the first time I've had a really close look at a first generation Sunbeam Alpine. I guess it's I guess there was Mark 1s and Mark 3s, but no Mark 2s for some reason. But let's get a sense of what we've got underneath here. As for usual 50s practice, you know, we've got the ladder frame and we've got the body that sits on it. I think other cars like an E-Type Jag might have, you know, the center section being a monocoque with then the cradle for the engine up front, and this isn't like that. So we can see the basic ladder frame, and this we would call underslung. Because the axle is over top of the frame, and they would have done this on not very many cars actually. Normally the ladder frame goes over the axle. I think an Invicta was like that pre-war, and I'm not sure what else. That's actually quite an unusual feature there. And then the check strap, the axle check strap, goes above the axle instead of below. So that is kind of interesting. And then these would be hydraulic lever shocks, and Austin Healey would have had a similar arrangement. And then we've got this fairly complex parking brake arrangement. Okay, so that's what's going on the back. Leaf springs as normal, but again, the axle goes over top of that. All right, Cross braced in the center. Well, that's kind of normal. Outriggers, you know, holding up the body. These are all drilled though. That's kind of interesting. I don't really see, that's actually kind of unusual too, to have this whole section drilled for lightness. It's not a particularly light car. I think it's about 3,000 pounds. Okay, and then we've got the brake master cylinder, which lives there. And the brake pedal is up there. Engine and gearbox. Let's see what else we've got. Okay, and then the frame is boxed section on the main longitudinal rails, and then kind of a C section otherwise. Okay, and then we get to the front. And then we've got the suspension hung on this subframe. Kind of looks like a Corvette, actually, just a lot smaller. So then we got coil springs in the front, drum brakes all around, and we've got upper and lower A-arms, and then the suspension is, well, the engine and suspension are held with this really quite a beefy front subframe, okay? Steering box is up there, and then it looks like, well, I guess that's a steel oil pan. Engine's been nicely finished. A relatively big bore exhaust. Sound deadening on the mufflers, they're all wrapped. And there we go. Okay, so, you know, more than a basic sports car, I would say. You know, it's got some interesting technical features. Okay, so now, what can we see about the, well, I guess what do we look for now? You know, obviously, you know, just a look at the car, it's obvious that it's a complete nut and bolt restoration. So the whole thing's been completely apart. We can see all the fresh fasteners kind of everywhere you look. And this car was done about 3 years ago or so. We can see that, you know, the chrome has been replated and so on. So what are we looking for? Well, I guess the first thing I would look for is, you know, look for damage or rust on the ladder frame. You know, is there any, do you see any evidence of any filler or sort of badly repaired sections, bad welds? And looking around, I mean, everything looks pretty good. Like, there's no soft metal. I mean, it's all, you know, everything is, you know, is just painted metal. I don't see any evidence of any bond or filler in any part of the chassis. I don't see any evidence of, you know, painted over rust. I don't see any evidence of like really sloppy welds or badly, you know, badly repaired chassis sections. I suppose that's about the worst of it, and it looks like it was painted over. I guess there's some undercoating underneath that. Yeah, so I can actually just kind of flick that off. So it looks like it was painted over some undercoating. That wasn't scraped off on this piece here for whatever reason. But that's about it. Everything else looks pretty good. And it's solid metal underneath there. I just don't, just nobody bothered to clean that metal up before they painted it. So there's that. Underneath the car, the floorboards and stuff, I mean, those are usually the first things to rust out. And I don't see any, like normally you know, if they've been cut out or something, you see the weld marks. And it all looks pretty good to me. I'm not sure what all was done, but there's nothing in there that looks sloppy at all, and it's all solid. You know, you see all the definitions from the different panels and the way they're spot welded together and so on, and you wouldn't see that if it was full of rust. Okay, So I guess that's one thing. We can look at the cross members in detail. I mean, if these start to go, then they hold up the body, which affects the door shut and the rest of it. Okay. So I don't see all the cross members look good on either side. I mean, it all looks solid and well done. Okay. I don't see any damage underneath the car. We had a close-up of some of these badges. Sports Car Club of Calgary. That one's from, I don't know if you can see that, 1959. And a 53 Alberta license plate. All these suspension pieces are fresh. You can see the castle nuts and the locking circlips that go in there. Everything's freshly greased. None of the rubber bushes have started to degrade. You can see everything's been done properly. Isn't that funny? A chain for the clutch. I'm not seeing any of the fasteners that are corroded. Like I said, we've got a modern electric brake pump and fuel filter. Sorry, fuel pump and fuel filter. The hoses are still supple, they're not dried out. I don't see any leaking from the brake lines. As the proper fabric check stops, or bumper, check straps, rubber buffer there. Exhaust has been painted. Fuel tank looks good. We can look at the lower extremities of the bodywork. I mean, the first places they're going to rust are in here, and I don't see any soft metal or evidence of panels welded in. A lot of welding work on it. Sometimes you can see really sloppy, prep marks and stuff on the bottom of the car. And I don't see that. On a bad car, stuff like this would just be bonded over and smoothed out. And we still see the way the edge is rolled on the body. This is a very high quality body. I think Thrupp and Maybury, I think I read that's who did it. So, that's a real coach built construction method when the edges of the body are rolled over like that. You don't really see that on new cars. On the bottom of this, again, I don't see any bubbling of paint or cracking of paint. I don't see, sometimes these joins are like bonded over. And I don't see any prep marks or evidence of excess filler in any of these parts. Sometimes if you look in the front, you can see evidence of accidents where dents are pounded out, and you can see metal working and stuff. I don't see that here. All looks good. Again, we'll run down this sill. I don't see rust, in between these two pieces of sheet metal. It all looks really good, actually. Not much to complain about. We do see a problem with this door, the bottom of that door. So there is some filler in there, and that paint is bubbling off, so we'll disclose that. And another chip there. But just that one place where the paint is coming off and everything else looks good. It's a little bit wet underneath, as you would expect from a 50s British car. It's fresh grease still in the ball joints, tie rod ends. But overall, you can tell that, what are the things you can tell? The chassis is straight. There's no rust in the chassis. Doesn't look like it had any invasive chassis repairs. At least I can't tell that there have been. And the restoration is reasonably fresh, so there's no corrosion on, or no significant corrosion on any of the fasteners. And all the rubber looks good, and it looks well put together. Like, I don't see any signs of corners being cut or it being sloppy. And I don't know how you could reasonably expect for much more. It's not, obviously it's not polished like a concours car, but it is obvious that it received a complete nut and bolt restoration. And it looks like the integrity of the body panels is still there, whatever paintwork was done to it. Because I see these, I don't see any evidence of rusting on the lower extremities or anywhere else. Okay, so with that is the underside of the 1953 Sunbeam Alpine. So let's start it up, and we'll do a cold start, and then we'll take it for a drive. So I'll get Aiden to come around the back. And we haven't fired this up, actually. We pushed it outside. We haven't fired it up for a while. So let's just see how this goes. So there's a device. We'll just show you that. Oh wait, nobody can hear me. So there is a device they added to the fuel system, and that's a switch that lives under here. And when you click it to the left, it primes the fuel pump. And then when it fires, then you switch it to run, okay? So that is an aftermarket modification, just to make it easier to start. Okay, but actually it runs pretty smooth. Okay, so we'll make our way to the engine bay, and we'll put the microphone in different places in the engine so you can listen to it. All right, well that sounds nice. Idle's very steady. Well, that sounds pretty nice. Engine runs sweetly. Idles nicely, seems unfussy, revs well, no ignition cutout, no strange noises from the bottom end or exhaust leaks or anything else that I can detect, and all appears to be pretty healthy. Let's just go look at the gauges, and we can look in there that we have 90 degrees Fahrenheit of water temperature, so it is still cold, 15 amps charging, and we've got oil pressure at 50 psi. We can see the tack is chugging around just under 1,000 RPM, and it's running pretty sweetly. Do you want to get a slow pan of all those? Just get right in there. And the tack and all right, let's take this Alpine for a drive. Now we got this little switch under here where I hit it that way to prime the SU fuel pump. Then I hit start. Oh no, then ignition on. Start, fires right up, it's on the button. And now, to not over fuel it, I put this in the run position. Okay, so now I'm ready.
There's also air down here, hey? Air controls? I didn't see that before.
Yeah, the black crackle finish. That's the the blower assembly, which is, I mean, that's a high quality item. I mean, many cars from the 50s don't even have, heater was an option, and then when you got that, sometimes you just got a little tin like these Clayton heaters with a couple flaps, like very agricultural, and that looks like something like right out of a Bentley. Okay, so we see the tachometer. We're idling steady at just under 1,000, like 850 RPM. We've got, I guess, 30 liters of fuel. 30 liters of fuel. Water temperature is at 170 Fahrenheit. We're charging at, well, it's actually saying we're not charging. Don't know what's going on there. And then we've got 50 psi of oil pressure. We have a lockout for reverse, which is the button, and a 4-speed gearbox. I don't think synchro on first. That would have been that would have been unusual. Okay, so let's go. So what can we say? Well, the clutch take-up is very easy and very tractable, and the engine has lots of torque, okay? So, and totally unfussy. Lots of power, shifts well. Really quite an interesting engine. I wouldn't say mechanically that quiet. It's quite a sporting engine actually, but very smooth, and it feels like it wants to rev. Like for 1953, this was I think quite an advanced engine. Certainly looks nice with all the aluminum castings and valve covers and so on. Signal lights are on the hub, and where is it telling us that the signal lights are working? Oh, right there, the red flasher indicating they're operational, and let's go. Yeah, it's definitely not slow for a 1953 car. Very easy to keep up with traffic. The road we're on here is used by semis and isn't very good at all. So it's a good opportunity to test the suspension, and there's lots of suspension compliance. And it's interesting because it's got an underslung rear axle, which would tend to limit the compliance in the rear, but I don't feel it. We've got lots of spring travel, and it's tracking like arrows straight, even on a really rough road, which is quite surprising. Gearbox is nice, synchros are nice. That was 4-3 downshift. And this is a very pleasant machine. I can't really remember what it reminds me of. It probably, you know, maybe one of the Mercedes sedans, like the 220 or something like that, would have been. It would have been a bit later, I suppose. But you know, the seating position and wheel and the general refinement of the controls reminds me of that. It's definitely a lot softer and more luxurious than the Healey's or the Triumph TR2 or any of those cars. But there's more mechanical noise than a Bentley. So for 1953, I've had a Bentley R-Type on one end, and I've had a Healey 104 as well. So this kind of slots, and a 58 Aston Martin too. This kind of slots in the middle between the Healey and the Jag and the Rolls-Royce. You know, it's more of a touring car in feel, and it's certainly very comfortable. That's what I first noticed about this car, which is immediately apparent, is it's very civilized, unfussy, softly sprung, and really comfortable. It doesn't at all beat you up like the out and out sports cars, the Triumph or the MG or the Austin Healey. But it still feels sporting, unlike something like the Bentley. There's this kind of elements of both in this car. It kind of reaches a middle ground. It feels like well-restored car. I mean, it hasn't been driven that much. I can't really fault. The engine's very nice. For the gearbox, I don't get any synchro mesh issues. I mean, I haven't tried to put it in first. I assume it's non-synchro first. But all the shifts are, the lever is really easy. You can just shift with 2 fingers, and no grinding of the synchro mesh. And it is a very pleasant little car, I gotta say. The cabin's well trimmed, the wind noise is low. I'm not getting buffed around. On the way here, I drove a Healey an hour and a half from out of town, and I was ready to kind of take a nap after putting that away, just because you get blown around so much. This one isn't the same. It's a lot more comfortable, a lot more refined, and you don't get anywhere near as much buffeting as you do with the Healey. So that's the difference here. So it's a charismatic. There's a nice 4-3 downshift, no grinding at all. Yeah, I'm gonna say this is, of all the cars from the 50s and 60s that I've driven, which would, obviously I'm not trying to say I've driven everyone, but of all of the cars I've driven, it reminds me most of a Mercedes 220, which they made in a sedan, coupe, and convertible. It reminds me of that the most. Same kind of refinement. The 220s have the 4-speed on the tree. So this has got the more sporting floor-mounted change. I love the 50s dash and the white Bakelite, which was a custom, and the carpeting and finishing is it's a high level. All the details, the door opener and the you know, strikers and so on, all look high quality. Feels like a quality. It feels like a quality machine. The engine's really smooth, surprisingly, and it's you know, it's a Sunbeam engine. It's not a transplant from another car. This is a car you could drive all day in city traffic. It doesn't take anything out of you at all. A lot of 50s cars aren't like that. They're pretty challenging to drive, and you get worn out pretty quick. But this is I mean, this could easily be I'm sure it was a daily driver in period. It could easily be a daily driver today. We've gone for a 15-minute drive or so, just checking the water temperature stays put at about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that the engine is totally warm, we're at about 25 psi of oil pressure, and our amp gauge, is it?
Stayed the same.
Our amp gauge doesn't seem to have moved, so I'm not sure what's going on. The car starts, so it's not like the battery's depleted. So I assume that it is, in fact, charging. We're showing 51,237 miles, which feels believable. All right, so we've gone for our 15-minute test drive in the Sunbeam Alpine Mark 1. And what can we say about it? Well, I think I summarized it up, you know, just with my commentary driving it. But I hadn't driven one before. In fact, I'm not sure I'd seen one in the flesh before. My comments on it, just to sum up, are it's a very comfortable, refined car that you could get a lot of enjoyment of and drive daily in the summer if you wanted to. And this particular example is a complete ground-up restoration with no corrosion and good quality paint, not concours, but good. Appears to have all of its trim, you know, trim and gauges and so on. It appears to be 100% original, apart from some modifications to the fuel system. And it's a very sort of happy, pleasant place to be. And it's got lots of period charm. And but I think the key with this car is that it's really easy to drive and really refined and really comfortable. Like, you could take your wife or your friend or whatever and, you know, drive it into the mountains or go for ice cream or whatever, and it's a pleasant experience. Like a lot of these cars, you know, they look great and you want to get in and drive them, but when you're driving them, it doesn't take you very long before you want to get out of them. And this isn't like that. This is like a very like I said, a very pleasant car. So with that, we'll wrap up this video. 1953 Sunbeam Alpine Mark 1, Lromanosky and Aidan Goss from Calgary, Canada, and the Lugnuts facility. And having a lovely fall drive in this 1953 Sunbeam Alpine Mark 1. Thank you very much. Please like and subscribe.